Well, this continues to 1934. Full reference then, John 17, 1934. Notice then that because you're living in two dimensions, you don't actually see the whole line. You're just somewhere on the paper, and you're moving along the line because of time's going on. You don't see what's writing the paper. It's just God. I mean, it's just the weather. I mean, there's no point looking for the scientific cause sort of thing. You're back in the Dark Ages. It's the act of God. And you get to a point where the line stops. And then later, suddenly the line starts again, and you're somewhere else. And you say, oh, look, miracle. The line started again. Thank you, Lord. And it's because you can't see the third dimension. If you could see the third dimension and Marshall writing, then it would all make sense. I mean, there would still be this amazing being called Marshall in the third dimension, but I mean, it's not that you were wrong, it was God, it's just that there's no way you could fathom what God was doing. I like this analogy of Marshall being God for a moment, it sort of appeals to my imagination, not being too humble. But do you see, it's not just the miraculous in the two dimensions. It's time. Because you're in the two dimensions, you're not looking at it. To you, it's a series of change. Inexplicable in a way, because, 1 minute you're here on the page, and the next minute you're moving along. And if you look at it from your memory point of view, you've got a line from the past to the present. It's presumably going to go into the future, but you don't know, because you don't know what causes the line, because you're not in three dimensions. And the line stops and starts again somewhere else, or takes a turn. And it's all very wonderful and inexplicable, because you don't have grasp of the third dimension. And it looks like time. But of course, if you're in the third dimension, you can look at your past in the two dimensions, and not at that point your future. Because I, holding the pen, Marshall, God in this case, may decide to cross the T, or, shift on to the next letter O, and so forth. So what seems like time, how could God be master of time, is very explicable if you've got another dimension that's not explaining why this looks like time in your dimension. I'm not sure as I've really got it here, but it sort of gives you some sort of intuitive feel for how time can be of the past, not yet of the future, but in some sense God can be outside of time in another dimension, which makes what has happened to you explicable, what will happen to you explicable if you knew the mind of God, but you don't, of course. You're living in the two dimensions, don't understand it at all. You're just the living in the two dimensions. Yes. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Perhaps it should be said, even at this point, that what's strange about time, as seen from our narrow point of view, of course, of our living here in the transitory, and whatever the number of dimensions are that we've got here, is something about motion, and about continuity. You see, why should, if we take motion for a minute, the fact that at this point in time, and that may be a misconception, of course, point, I mean, not time, we say this has motion, which means we can't be at a point, we must be comparing 2 points. And if we've been moving at a certain speed and so on and mass, then it's going to continue such into the future. Or if you could say lack of motion, it's just here. Why should it be here in the next time period? What's the link? I'm moving at 30 miles an hour, and we know that in a time understanding, I don't just stop dead. The next moment I'm still. I slow down. It takes time because there's potential energy that's being used up as kinetic energy or something, or displayed as such, and the motion continues through time. Why should the motion transfer through time? In fact, why should your existence transfer through time? And of course, in a sense, it doesn't. I mean, if I, for argument's sake, take the piece of paper away or screw it up, well, that's the end of the matter. In terms of the 2 dimensions of the sheet of paper, the paper doesn't exist any longer to have 2 dimensions or whatever. In that sort of view of things. The continuity problem of motion and existence is the fascination. Having said that, if we think of thought for a minute, it's come from not being. I was not thinking of thought. I was thinking of motion and time and this recording. And now I am thinking of thought. And that thought simply wasn't and now is. And I sort of keep coming back to it because I'm holding that thought in mind at the minute. And then when I help my friend move house later this morning, I won't be thinking of thought. I'll be thinking of, am I being helpful to her, and are we getting the job done, and make sure I don't injure my back and so on. My thoughts will be other. There won't be a continuity. And our life is like that. I'm living at the minute. But there will be a time when I'm not living anymore. You could say when God will not be thinking of me here. I put it in that form because I'm hoping and trusting that he'll be thinking of me in paradise, in his wonderful family. But I don't know, do I? I just hope and trust and can't see any good reason for not doing so, because to think of anything else is purgatory by comparison, or simply annihilation. Yeah, well, we know all about that. I've talked about it endlessly, haven't I? But yes, do you see the mystery, if there are more dimensions than we are au fait with, we're used to and experienced in, and we can't see out of the dimensions we're in into other dimensions. We suppose them in maths, and that's quite fascinating. And we say, yes, well, if it was n-dimensional, then we got an n-dimensional vector of possibilities here, and matrices and so on, and just think, wow, is this fantasy? And yet we seem to come up with, and suddenly, we've got some quantum theory of existence that presupposes other dimensions, or in a sense implies such, and only makes sense, or that we don't know if it's only, perhaps we can make sense of it in another way. And that, of course, that's the problem, isn't it? That, we're in fairyland with quantum physics, and we'll come back to good solid science eventually when we realise, where the electron appears to be is not random chance at all. It's because of the following, in terms of the dimensions that we know. And we hope for that, or science comes to an end. We simply are back with, it's in the hands of the gods. It's random, Well, if it's random, there's no point in me looking for the cause, because there isn't one. So, of course, I give up, and we have the accepted doctrine of it's random until some genius finds that it's not random in terms of the dimensions we're in. It's very explicable if we realise so-and-so, and we're away again, and science recovers as from a drunken state back into good, firm, hard scientific reality of cause and effect in terms of our 3 dimensions or 4 dimensions. How many are we living in? We think of time as a 4th dimension, but it's a very odd one, isn't it? It might well be a catch-all for a number of dimensions we know nothing about and their apparent effect on us in the dimensions that we've got. I've said enough, and I think I might be starting to be repetitive. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.